Some muscle cars are rare, a few are legendary, but only one stands at a height no price tag can explain. This countdown climbs from icons to impossibilities, each more valuable than the last. Stay with me, because the 10th car is a story you will feel surprise after the screen fades. The Ford Mustang Shelby GT500, known as Eleanor, is one of those rare spirits. It was not the original Mustang from the early film, yet the silver-gray fastback that stormed across the screen in Gone in 60 Seconds rose far beyond the drag strip and settled into American pop culture like few cars ever have. In the year 2013, the hero car, used for the close scenes, the very one guided by actor Nicolas Cage, crossed the auction stage for $1 million. Measured in today's value, that climbs to roughly $1.4 million. What gave Eleanor its gravity was more than the spotlight. The real 1967 Shelby GT500 was born in the era when Carroll Shelby was still pouring every ounce of knowledge into building the fastest Mustangs in America. Beneath the long hood rested a 405 cubic inch V8 that delivered well above 300 horsepower in real-world driving, paired with a 4-speed transmission that pushed the car forward with the blunt force that defined the golden age of high-performance pony cars. The fastback shape, the extended nose, the raised hood, and the twin stripes running the length of the body made the car feel as if it were lunging ahead even when it stood completely still. Eleanor also carried a long shadow of controversy. For years, a legal claim argued that the name Eleanor represented a protected film character. This forced many builders to stop offering Mustang recreations inspired by that famous shape. But a United States court eventually ruled that Eleanor was not a character protected by law, opening the doors for enthusiasts and craftsmen to once again recreate the spirit of that unforgettable GT500. If you are traveling with us through the stories of the most valuable muscle cars ever sold, let American Muscle Soul stay close beside you. A gentle tap on subscribe is enough to make sure we do not lose one another among the legends of the past. In the late 1960s, as the horsepower war between American automakers reached a fever pitch, Chevrolet quietly activated the COPO program, a backdoor system where special orders were handled far from the public eye. Out of that shadowed corner came the Chevrolet Camaro ZL1, a machine created not to please the crowd but to satisfy the dreams of straight-line racers who wanted something far beyond the limits of a typical pony car. 69 cars were built, each carrying a 427 cubic inch big block made entirely of aluminum, a design born from the brutal world of Can-Am racing. It was a daring leap in an era when most high-performance engines were still cast in iron. The ZL1 delivered real-world power well above anything Chevrolet claimed, giving it acceleration that few street-legal machines of its time could approach. Period testers in America recorded the ZL1 running the quarter-mile in roughly 12 seconds, a number that forced many amateur drag racers to rethink their confidence. The Camaro ZL1 was also shockingly expensive to build. The engine alone carried a price tag close to $3,000, which was more than the cost of an entire standard Camaro. That pushed the full sticker into the realm of $7,000 to $8,000 in the year 1969, making it nearly impossible for dealers to sell these cars without discounts or long waits. In the year 2020, a Hugger Orange ZL1 crossed the auction block for a touch over $1,094,000, reinforcing its place as one of the most valuable Camaros ever to reach daylight. If you have ever seen a ZL1 in person or simply feel the pull of its story, leave a sign below so I know this legend still has someone listening. The Chevrolet Chevelle SS/LS6 convertible emerged at a moment when Detroit was pushing power to its absolute limit. Beneath its long hood lived a 454 cubic inch big block that delivered far more than the advertised 450 horsepower, a surge of force that threw the car forward with the kind of authority only the final years of the muscle era could provide. Tests from the period recorded quarter-mile passes that fell into the low 13-second range and sometimes the high 12s, Its appearance carried the confident stance of a true Chevrolet performer, with broad shoulders, a wide track, and a face that looked ready to challenge anything waiting at the next stoplight. The convertible layout added a rare sense of openness to a machine built on brute strength, creating a contrast between the calm of the open sky and the storm held inside its iron block. Only a very small number of these drop-top LS6 cars were produced, making every surviving example a prized artifact from a moment when power still ruled unchallenged. One example prepared by Truppy Kling for drag racing, a car with real motorsport history rather than showroom stillness, crossed the auction block for $1,150,000. Well-preserved LS6 cars still command values far above the ordinary Chevelle, a reminder that this convertible remained one of the purest expressions of Chevrolet power before regulations reshaped the American road. The Plymouth Superbird arrived in the year 1970 as a weapon built for a single purpose. NASCAR rules demanded that any race car must have a road-going counterpart, and so Plymouth shaped an ordinary mid-size body into a long-nosed missile with a towering rear wing. It was created to lure Richard Petty back to the brand, a move that proved successful when the King returned and carried the winged car into racing history. Its design remains one of the most dramatic expressions of muscle-era aerodynamics. The pointed nose cone stretched the body far forward, smoothing airflow and giving the Superbird a top speed that brushed against 200 miles per hour in race trim. The street version kept the same silhouette, and the tall rear wing stood higher than the roofline so it could work in clean air rather than turbulence. The result was a car that looked like a creature built for flight, not pavement. Under the hood, buyers could choose between a 440 cubic inch big block or the legendary 426 Hemi, both delivering enormous torque and real-world horsepower far above typical pony car standards. When new, a Superbird carried a sticker that hovered a touch above $4,000, a price many buyers found too extreme for a shape they did not yet understand. Production remained small, with just under 2,000 cars assembled, enough to satisfy racing rules, but far from enough to dull their rarity. One of the stories tied to the Superbird comes from Richard Petty himself, who insisted that the car changed the direction of his career. With its impossible profile and sky-high wing, the Superbird became an instant magnet for curiosity, and decades later its legend only grew, leading one example to reach $1,650,000 at auction. The Ford Mustang Shelby GT500 Supersnake began as a quiet experiment in the year 1967, created for a simple but demanding purpose. Goodyear needed a car strong enough to destroy a set of tires during high-speed durability testing, and Carroll Shelby responded with a machine that existed far beyond any showroom dream. He borrowed a race-bred 427 cubic inch V8 from the Ford GT40 Mark II, the same engine that carried Ford to victory at Le Mans, and placed it under the long hood of a single GT500 fastback. The result was a Mustang with performance that belonged to another class entirely. Contemporary expectations placed the real-world horsepower well above 500, and the Supersnake could surge toward speeds few street machines dared attempt. It carried the familiar Shelby stance, wide, shouldered, and purposeful, yet this prototype wore an added sharpness, as if it understood its role was not to impress buyers, but to complete a mission. Every line of the fastback body seemed drawn tighter, and the deep howl of the 427 made the car feel alive long before the wheels began to turn. Only one Supersnake was ever built, making it the rarest Shelby tied to the Mustang name. When it resurfaced at a Mecum auction in Kissimmee, Florida, it stunned even seasoned collectors by climbing to a record of $2,200,000. That figure reflected more than rarity, it captured the spirit of Carroll Shelby himself, a man who never believed in limits. If you are still with us on this journey, leave a comment below. A single word, or even the number 5, is enough for me to know that legends like this still reach the right people. The Plymouth Hemi Cuda Convertible of 1970 emerged at the height of the Mopar performance wave, a moment when engineers in Detroit were still free to chase outrageous power with almost no limits. The Cuda platform was already the wild child of Plymouth, but pairing it with the 426 cubic inch Hemi and an open-top body created something no one expected. Only 14 Hemi-powered convertibles left the factory that year, each one carrying the legendary hemispherical chamber V8 that delivered real-world horsepower well above 400. The car surged with violent torque that could overwhelm its tires without warning, yet when treated with respect, it delivered the kind of acceleration that placed it among the fastest factory machines of its era. Its design remained unmistakably Cuda, with broad fenders, a short wheelbase, and a stance that looked coiled even at rest. The open roof added a strange contrast, giving the car a sense of freedom, even as the engine beneath the hood felt barely contained. Decades later, the rarest examples became treasures. A plum-crazy car, once owned by Chrysler designer John Hurlitz, reached $2,250,000. But the highest moment came when a bright yellow example crossed the Mecum auction stage in the year 2016, reaching an astonishing $2,940,000. That sale confirmed the Hemi Cuda Convertible as one of the most valuable muscle cars ever created, a legend born from 14 machines and a single unforgettable engine. The Dodge Charger Daytona 426 Hemi emerged in the final stretch of the 1960s, created not for the open road but for the fierce winds of NASCAR. It arrived as a machine shaped by necessity, a car designed to slip through the air at speeds that ordinary bodies could never reach. Engineers carved its long, pointed nose and lifted its towering rear wing into clean atmospheric flow, giving the Daytona an identity that felt more like a purpose-built missile than a muscle car. Under the long tapered nose lay the 426 cubic inch Hemi, an engine whose real-world horsepower soared far beyond factory claims. With immense torque and surprising stability at speed, it became one of the most formidable machines ever approved for public roads. Its design was unlike anything America had seen. The extended front cone reduced drag to historic lows, while the towering rear wing generated downforce that transformed high-speed control. Many buyers in 1969 did not understand the purpose of such radical styling, which made showroom sales slow and ensured that production numbers stayed small. A few decades later, collectors understood the significance. In the year 2022, a Daytona 426 Hemi, with a well-documented history, crossed the Mecum stage in Kissimmee, Florida, reaching an astounding $3,300,000. One of the most famous stories surrounding the Daytona comes from the moment Bobby Isaac drove a winged Charger to a closed-course record that stunned the racing world, proving that Dodge had created something far greater than a marketing experiment. The Plymouth Hemi Cuda Convertible of 1971 stands at the very edge of the Mopar legend, a car so scarce that even seasoned collectors speak of it with a kind of reverence. Only 11 Hemi-powered convertibles left the factory that year, and only 2 carried the 4-speed manual transmission, a combination so rare that it turned the 1971 model into the holy grail of the entire Mopar world. One of those cars went to auction in the year 2014 and reached a remarkable $3,500,000, sealing its place among the most valuable muscle machines ever built. Its heart remained the fearsome 426 cubic inch Hemi, an engine whose real-world horsepower climbed far beyond factory ratings. The 1971 version delivered the same violent surge of torque that made the Cuda a menace on the quarter mile. Able to push the convertible into the 13-second range, and toward speeds few open-top American cars of its era could safely approach. The styling of the 1971 Cuda brought sharper lines and deeper aggression compared to the previous year. The grille was split into 2 darkened sections that gave the car a predatory stare, while the front fenders rose into proud muscular arches. The convertible roof softened none of its presence. Even with the top down, the Cuda looked coiled and ready, a machine shaped by force rather than elegance. Every angle suggested motion, and every shadow hinted at the kind of power only a Hemi could deliver. The Highland Green Ford Mustang GT Bullitt from 1968 became one of the most valuable Mustangs in history, not because of rarity alone, but because of the story burned into its metal. It was the car guided by Steve McQueen in the film Bullitt, a machine thrown through the steep streets of San Francisco, in a chase scene that changed the way Hollywood captured speed. For decades, the Mustang disappeared into private ownership, believed by many to be gone forever, until it resurfaced in the year 2018 and reignited its myth. The car carried a 390 cubic inch V8, an engine known for its deep surge of torque and the kind of real-world horsepower that made the Mustang GT a dominant street performer. In the hands of a skilled driver, it pushed hard through the mid-ranges, delivering strong acceleration that fit the aggressive driving style seen in the film. It could surge past 100 miles per hour with authority, yet its character was never about top speed. It was about the way the car moved, leaned, and clawed through a hillside street, with a sound that echoed against concrete walls. Its styling was understated compared to many muscle machines of its era. The 1968 GT wore no stripes, no loud colors, and almost no chrome. The Highland green paint gave the car a quiet confidence, allowing the long hood, fastback roofline, and tough stance to speak for themselves. This subtle approach made the Bullitt Mustang feel more like a street fighter than a showpiece. The Shelby Cobra CSX2000 stands at the very top of this journey, a machine whose value has risen far beyond the reach of ordinary collectors. It was the very first Cobra Carroll Shelby ever built, the car that carried his hopes, his doubts, and his determination long before the name Cobra meant anything to the world. When it crossed the R.M. Sotheby's stage nearly a decade ago, its price climbed to an astonishing $13.75 million, the highest figure ever paid for an American muscle-borne machine. Its design remains the purest expression of Shelby's intent. The lightweight British-inspired body wrapped itself around American power, creating an open-top shape that felt both delicate and dangerous. The long nose tapered toward the road, the short tail rose with confidence, and every curve suggested motion, even when the car sat perfectly still. Later, Cobras would grow wider and angrier, but the CSX2000 stayed true to the original idea of blending finesse with fury. Carroll Shelby kept this first Cobra for the rest of his life, using it as a rolling canvas as he refined the handling, the stance, and the spirit of what would become one of the most influential cars in American history. The rarest machines become mirrors of their era, and the CSX2000 has become a symbol of an entire generation of dreamers and builders. If you feel something stir when hearing its story, you are not alone. Some cars are expensive, a few are priceless, and only one sits at the very top of this list.